everyone. Thank you for being here. I think I already met most of you, but just in case, I will introduce myself. My name is Cris Garcia. I have a background in art conservation, and I am currently the Shape Manifest Conservation Project Manager in Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park in Skagway, Alaska. I would like to start my presentation talking a little bit about the park. Well, the park is located in Skagway, which is a place that celebrates its frontier heritage, and it exists because of the Klondike Gold Rush, which was an event that consisted of the immigration of people coming from all over the world to this little corner up in the frozen north. The park sees value in protecting and preserving the trails, stories, artifacts, and historic structures related to this event. KLGO is composed by different units that are spread out around the city and also other areas near the border with Canada. So to give you some context, the blue dots is where Skagway is located. So the first unit is the Dai Historic Site. We also have the Historic Chilkoot Trail, the White Pass Trail, and last but not least, the Historic District. And I'm gonna zoom in for this one because I want you to know where it is located within the town. If you're interested in checking our buildings, there is a really cool site in our website that you can check and read a little bit about all the buildings that the park preserves. So, as I just mentioned, Skagway has, the Park Service has over 20 historic structures that have been, most of them have been preserved. And some of them function as the park offices, others are museum facilities, and the park also leases some of them to other businesses in town. The Dai Historic Town Site used to be a boom town during the Klondike Gold Rush. It currently is a ghost town, and we have an archaeological site that is currently being excavated. The Chilkoot Trail, it is a 33-mile trail that stampeders could take to start their journey up to the gold fields out in Canada. If I remember correctly, 16 miles are on the US side, while the rest of it is located in Canada. This trail started in Dai. And then we have the White Pass Trail, which was another of the trails that the stampeders could take to go up to the gold fields. And the difference between this one and the Chilkoot Trail is that this one started in Skagway. So the park has two main collections. We have the natural history collections and also the resources collections. To give you some context of where the Shape Manifest belong to within the park's collections, pretty much they're part of the archival collections that we have. Within this collection, we have another category, which is the George and Edna Rapuzzi collection, also known as the Rapuzzi collection. And this is where the Shape Manifests are located. So the Shape Manifest collection, to give you a little bit of context, since acquiring the Shape Manifest, we are pretty much the first people who are checking the documents individually. There's a lot of context missing about where these documents come from. but what we do know is that they belonged to George Rapuzzi, which is the man in this photo here. He was an Scandinavian, and he loved collecting Gold Rush era artifacts. Although he was born in 1899, half of the ship manifest was donated to the park, while the rest of it was kept by the Skagway Museum. So some of the project goals is that these historic documents will provide primary information about the movement of people and the history of the Klondike Gold Rush and early Alaskan history. We're also doing conservation treatments on the documents and archival processing, which includes cataloging and entering metadata. And last but not least, we're also digitizing them. So the project relevance, these historic documents represent pretty much a primary source of information that the park has that is smaller than a building. They provide direct information about the movement of people, goods, and also the maritime routes used during the Klondike Gold Rush era. They provide enough information to respond to many of the visitor questions related to genealogical requests, but also just research requests in general. So one thing that I really like to tell people about this project is that we all know the Gold Rush was a really well documented period. We have a lot of photographs, and pretty much everything you see in these photos, the people, the stuff they used to bring with them, well, it was documented, and we have access to it in our historic documents that we're working with. We are an interdisciplinary team that is composed by Sara Piasecki, which is present here. She is an archivist, and she is based in Anchorage, Alaska. We're also working with Allison Holcomb. She's a paper conservator, and she's based in Purposeful Center, which is in West Virginia. Well, I am the project manager, and I work with 3 NCPE interns, which are Lexi, Kay, and Elisa, and we're all based in Skagway. We also have some additional support and oversight from the resources division from the park, and also, of course, the museum program. So one thing that I would like to mention is that at the beginning of the internship, we have a 1-week training where we get to have all the team present in Skagway, and the interns learn how to carry on basic paper conservation treatments, and also how to process and catalog documents. These are my current interns, Lexi, Kay, and Elisa. They're great. And these are some of the former team members that we've had. Again, this is a project that started back in 2022, and we're currently on the 3rd year. So this has been the team throughout the years, 2022, 23, and currently 24. Well, I already mentioned I work with NCPE interns. NCPE is the National Council for Preservation Education. It is a nonprofit educational organization that offers career opportunities and internship opportunities for current students and recent graduates. All of their internships are paid, and many of them include also housing allowances and travel stipends. So it's really convenient for people if they want to come to Skagway to know they don't have to pay for the full. I mean, we're covering their expenses of getting there and out of Skagway. These are some of the fields where they offer internships. So many of them, first, are cultural focused. So talking a little bit about the document condition, some of them are currently inaccessible due to their poor condition. We've found mold in some of them, and we also have many documents that have had issues with the ink. The ink has faded almost to the point where the information is a total loss. Some of the paper has also become brittle, and this pretty much means that it also has been folded in pretty particular ways to the point where it cannot be handled without being damaged. The conservation treatments we're carrying on are only stabilization conservation treatments. So the first one, and this is pretty much something we do with all of them, the surface cleaning. It basically eases legibility and reduces the potential of mold growth. Overall, it improves aesthetics of the documents. We also have humidification and flattening, and these two pretty much come together. The humidification, we pretty much use wet brushes to on the folds and creases that the paper has. So the paper fibers can relax, and then once we put them between blotted papers, we usually leave them overnight depending on the condition of the paper. So once they're placed between the blotted papers and some weight, while drying, the papers become flat again. Mending, well, we pretty much do this treatment to stabilize any tears that could represent a hazard for the documents during future handling. And last but not least, we have filling of losses, which is, we pretty much fill losses that the paper would have that also could represent a hazard during future handling. So this is how the conservation treatments look like. The first one is superficial cleaning, and for these we use a dry sponge that we tap all over the surface of the paper. Humidification and flattening. There are different methods to approach this step, but we're currently using wet brushes. We also have some mist sprayers that have worked really well. Mending, I don't think from your seats you can tell where the Japanese paper is, but it is right here. And oh yes, there it is. Yeah, Allison is holding it. It already had adhesive. And last but not least, I have this loss that was part of a seal, and it was already conserved right here. So for the archival processing and digitization, this includes metadata entry, digitization, and last but not least, greenhousing. Some of the things that we are including in our database are the inventory number, the original box where the documents were taken from, bundle number, page number. We're also including what were the conservation treatments that were done, and other information like the bundle title, what type of document it is, some keywords, of course. We are at this point in the project, we pretty much know which companies we would like to track. So we're adding companies' names, people's names, port cities, and we're also keeping track of characteristics that the paper has, like does it have any watermarks, seals, or even postage stamps. We're also keeping track of who processed the documents and when they were processed. So once the conservation treatments are done and the metadata entry has been entered, the documents must be digitized. And regardless of the content, if there's something written in one side, well, it has to be scanned. It doesn't matter if they're just calculations, even just doodles, we are scanning them. So we have two different methods for digitizing them. The first one is, and this is what we use for up to legal size documents. We use a scanner. And then for oversized documents, we use a copy stand and a DSLR camera. So far, and we have found, and this is something that Sara put together for her presentation during the training. So far, we know we have documents that date at least from 1894 to 1919. We found 62 different vessels, 80 different paper watermarks. We now know people love their bacon and also their liquor. And I mentioned this in a table yesterday, but we know Elmer Afrin was quite a guy. And don't worry, you will hear more about him later. This is our current word cloud. Of course, the larger words means that they have been repeated the most. And if you pay attention, you can see steamship is one of them, but we also have some of the vessels names, port cities, and yeah, the word company is everywhere. It doesn't look as well in the projector, but these are some of the watermarks that have been digitized. And we found many of them that are pretty simple, but we also have some that are really elaborate, like the elves that you see down there. The kangaroo on the right. Some of the scope of documents that we have found include correspondence, tickets, many different types of manifests, like cargo manifest, passenger manifest, posting manifest, some permits, and so far we have only found one that was really specific, the permit to possess alcohol, and that was just for medicinal purposes. And of course, some financial documents like bank statements. This is how some of the documents look like. We have passenger tickets. Of course, not all of them come in their own envelope, but many of the ones we found just look like this one here. We have a passenger manifest, correspondence, also cargo manifest. And here I was going to ask you if you've done polyography in the past or if you're familiar with handwriting. I was going to challenge you to try to find the word bacon, but I don't think you can see it from there. Unless them up. Yeah, sure.
I'm going to open up that window here, like I can use that seems like
No, that's all right. Anybody? Feel free to come closer and take a look.
To the center. The lower.
Yes, it says bacon there.
Oh, wait. Are there more bacon?
I think that's the only one. We have sugar and rice.
I see rice.
No, there's another bacon.
Beans, I see beans.
I think it's the one on top of it.
Yeah, that's the bacon, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Bacon.
Bacon. Bacon is the only word. Bacon is the rice. So yeah, this is one of the cargo manifests that was going for DAI back in, I think this was from 1897, so right during the Klondike Gold Rush. Customs entries, wharf manifest, and this was another really particular cargo manifest that I wanted to include because it specifically says it is listing liquid for use on ship only. You know, people really like their liquid. Hosting manifest, and this one lists all the port cities where the vessels stopped on their way to Skagway or DAI. You can see there's Skagway, Wrangell, Juneau is often found there, and Tlaquepaque, Douglas. And bank statements and other receipts. We had a lot of these. I remember the first bundle that we worked with, or at least that we found. I think there were like 200 of these, and they pretty much looked the same. And yeah, if you pay attention, it might be hard to read, but right here, there's a really particular name. Elmer A. Friend, which takes me to the next topic I want to talk about, which is the interesting findings. Sarah knows about this. I have a whole story with Elmer A. Friend. After working in this project for, this is my third year now, we often find repetitive people's names. And these are like the agents, pursers that used to work for the steamship companies in Skagway. Elmer A. Friend is everywhere. And most of the documents I found his name in were correspondence and also the bank statements. One time I was checking some of the boxes that haven't been conserved, and I found a really particular high quality looking paper that looked something like this. It reminded me a little bit of a wedding invitation somehow. So I started reading it, and I realized it was a personal letter addressed to Elmer A. Friend. And I don't know if you can read it from there at all, but right on top says, "My dear Mr. Friend." And pretty much is somebody that is asking Elmer A. Friend for a favor. They wanted to send some books through him out to Skagway. So that way he wouldn't pay a lot of money for it. And this person asks him about his wife, his babies, and he also mentions that he was always a really serious looking man. So these little things are what I consider the real like treasures that you can find within the collection that you were not really expecting to see. And I was really happy that I got to know him a little bit better and, you know, learn about his personal life. One time I was telling my interns from last year about Elmer A. Friend and how often we just continue to find his name within the documents. And I told them, you know what? It would be really nice to be able to put a face on his name. Well, my intern, Brayden, took it as a challenge, and he loves doing research. So guess what? He found a photo of him. And of course, oh well, it was super hard. But this is how he looked before retiring. And yeah, he was such a character in Skagway. He also found a newsletter, little article about her newborn baby. And I love Elmer. Another interesting finding was this cargo manifest sent from San Francisco to Skagway. And if you read who was sending it, it was Levi Strauss-Co. So this is how it looked before being conserved. And this is how it looks after being cleaned and digitized. If you pay attention, it says that it's going for Seattle. But if you look at the back of it, right here, you can confirm it made it to Skagway in September of 1908. And of course, they were sending overalls and flannel shirts. Another interesting finding was, well, is related to Ross Higgins' company. This used to be a grocery store in Daic. And we happened to found its name a lot of times. What is interesting about this is that last year, the archaeological crew from the park started digging Ross Higgins. So one of the really nice things about this project is that within the time span of the project, multiple projects within the park can take place. So we were able to support the archaeology crew in providing access to the digitized documents for them to check and have a clearer idea of what they could potentially find while digging out in Daic. Does anybody see Ross Higgins listed here? I don't. I'll tell you where it is. It is right there, Ross Higgins and Co. And then on this other cargo manifest is right here. Again, I don't think you can really see from where you're sitting, but another challenging thing about trying to read these documents is the way that people used to write names and how they used to abbreviate things differently. At this point, we're more familiar with it, but at the beginning, it was pretty challenging.
So are they excavating where the Ross Higgins store was?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So in this passenger manifest, we found Teresa Rapuzzi's name. She was George Rapuzzi's mother. And assuming by the date, she most likely was already pregnant with him. And she was coming from Seattle, going to Daic. And her name is right there. So I wanted to take a minute to talk about how it is to set up a temporary conservation lab. Again, we are currently doing stabilization treatment only, but I just wanted to share with you all that you probably pretty much have already all that you need to set up one. For us, the first photo shows how the space where we currently work, looked like in the past. And you see, we only have a few shelves, some tables, we need flat surfaces. And at the very back of the second photo, you can see there's the stack of plotter papers with the big piece of glass that we use as weight when we do communication and flattening. And this is how the lab looked once we had everything that we needed. It doesn't look as dark here. I'm sorry for this. But yeah, pretty much we have some lamps with magnifier glasses that the park already had. And for the most of the supplies we got from the local hardware store in Skagway. And the rest of the really particular supplies that we needed to for conservation treatments, we just ordered them online. And I'm pretty sure your museum probably already orders from there. Can I say names?
Yeah.
Like we often just order from Gaylord or Talas.
So on the documents, you had blotter paper, the document, blotter paper. Did you layer more than one document at a time under the glass?
We can. Yeah, we can flag multiple documents at the same time.
Okay.
So how do we approach a collection like this that pretty much nobody has seen in the past or checked in the past? Well, per request of the former KLGO's curator, Lisa Kramer, Yuan and I developed a processing survey based on McGinley's methodology, which if you're interested in reading, it's called Worse Management in Collections Management, which pretty much allowed us to quantify and evaluate the condition of the documents per box. So that way we were able to prioritize the need for conservation and processing. These were the four main factors that we consider. The first one is the research value, conservation urgency, digitization difficulty, and the current housing condition. So for the research value, as I just mentioned, within the time span of our project, multiple projects can take place at the park. So prioritizing the processing of documents that can contribute to these other projects is desired. And the research value is determined based in the resources management planning and also continuing consultation within the division, the cultural resources division. Conservation urgency. This pretty much refers to the stability of the documents. So what is the required effort for treatment, which translates in time? Does it need to be clean? Does it need to be humidified? First, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to take the same amount of time to conserve this first flat, overall clean document that you see in the first photo, and dealing with these rolled papers that will, of course, need humidification, and also this last super dirty document that we have on the left, right, that will pretty much, we will most likely have to clean multiple times in order to remove all the dirt that is on it. For digitization difficulty, we have three things that we consider, which is the amount of information that the document contains. The more information, the longer it's going to take for us to capture metadata. The size of it. It's not going to be the same digitizing a legal size document than an oversized one. That implies us to use the copy stand, the DSLR camera, and then we have material nature. We have found some translucent papers, and also maybe the documents are shine. That's going to reflect the light from the scanner, you know, things like this. Or even just the ink problem that we found. Of course, it's going to be much easier to digitize a really legible document than trying to digitize the document on the right where you can barely read what it says because the ink has pretty much faded. Last but not least, we have the housing condition, which includes the archival unit condition and the environment condition. So after checking all the boxes and converting the raw scores, we pretty much had 5 different levels that goes from 1 to 5, 1 being the highest priority one, and 5 being the lowest. Our results pretty much were that out of the 28 boxes that we surveyed, 6 of them were assigned a level of 4, which means that they are in overall inclined condition. 21 boxes had a level number of 3, which means that, yeah, care needs to be taken at some point, but again, their condition is stable. 1 box was assigned a level of 2, which means that greater emergency for conservation. And of course, and we were expecting this, none of the boxes was assigned level 1 or 5, which 1 would stand for greatest urgency and 5 for a perfect condition. So some of the boxes were assigned a research value of 6, which means at the moment we're basically documents updated from the actual Gold Rush period. Again, research value is subjective and it will depend on what you're looking for. Maybe what is important or relevant for me is not relevant for your research project. Conservation urgency. 2 boxes were given a score higher than 6. And this was because we were dealing with really specific material characteristics like this translucent paper. And they were also in a format of a book. The interns don't get trained to deal with things as challenging as this. So what we end up doing is sending this out to Repository Center, which is where the park conservators are based. So for housing condition, they all got low scores because they were pretty much in overall good condition. They were already in a environmental control storage place. And digitization difficulty, well, it pretty much includes the oversized documents, as I said before, and book items that we have. So just as a brief conclusion for this processing survey, we confirmed that the methodology is a successful model, and of course it can be adjusted and modified in the future depending on what our interests are. So some of the collection challenges will pretty much be the provenance. It is not clear for us where the documents were coming from. We know Rapuzzi had them at any point. Where did he get them? We don't really know. He created an artificial collection. Also, there is not original order anymore because, again, there's a lot of context information missing. And the documents have been just reorganized multiple times. The record's life cycle. The ship manifests were not meant to last. They were just like receipts. So they were meant to be temporary. Last but not least, the organic nature of records. How do they relate with each other? Do they even relate with each other? And then some of the unique issues for this conservation project is we're doing conservation before appraisal. There's a high research value that's been presumed, but it hasn't been confirmed. Again, unclear provenance. And we're just dealing with a large collection. So throughout the years, we have been, well, yeah, because we have no option. We have to be and remain flexible. There's a lot of things that we just continue to discover and that we will continue to discover because we still have many boxes that still need to be processed, and we are aware of it. We now are used to this. And again, one of my favorite things about it is that you really can't tell what you are going to find. These are some of the resources if you like to know a little bit more about NCPE or the park. And yeah, thank you.
What portion of the overall collection do the ship's manifests represent? A quarter, a third, a half,
It's-
10%?
It's really hard to tell for me because we don't even know how many documents in total we have. But we know the Rapuzzi collection is pretty big and it included buildings, artifacts, documents, photographs. Do you have a clear idea on these, Sarah?
So I think you know about how many individually processed already.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
What is that number? Is it?
I think we're currently around 4,000-ish.
Yeah, I did an estimate last year and sort of cost out. And there's about 15,000 to go. In this ship manifest. Carve out.
Portion.
Right. And as you know, Chris alluded to the fact that a lot of the Rapuzzi collection went to the city museum in Skagway. So they did receive some archival records, but it doesn't look like they received any of this kind of stuff. That this stuff was kind of set aside in some way, either because of how he acquired it, or because they selected, other types of archival materials.
Which might be images.
Right. And so like within the Rapuzzi, there was stuff that he collected that pertained to certain things that he was interested in. Just a big city booster, right? So he was always just vacuuming up history. And I have all these theories about where this material came from. I'm happy to speak to off the record because I'm sure none of them are actually true. But like Chris said, it's kind of hard to tell because sometimes you'll open up a bundle and it looks like it's about this thick, and so it might be 5 pages, but it turns out the paper is very thin. Maybe it's that onion skin paper, and copy paper, and it turns out there's actually 20 of them, So it can be really challenging to sort of estimate how much material is there. But I think it's through the processing survey, we've identified the areas to look at first. So at least hopefully we'll get to the stuff that's good content.
Yeah.
You had mentioned, like how many boxes, could you remind us? You had that in your slide earlier.
28.
There's 20 boxes of just the ship manifest.
Yes.
And then how many boxes for the archival collection? Would you add?
Within the Rapuzzi. So it's,
Yeah,
so-
it's within the
yeah,
Rapuzzi, I
so-
don't mean overall.
yeah, so not all Rapuzzi is archival. So there's
Right.
like Chris said, there's buildings involved, there's lots and lots of objects. But I think of the Rapuzzi archival stuff, the shipping manifest is the biggest chunk of it, right? I think
Like within the
rest of it,
archival
yeah.
part of it, yes.
Is there another
Definitely.
20 boxes or is there number 10?
No, and many of the rest of the pieces are oversized.
Oh,
So he had
it might be like
like
blueprints or.
posters, yeah, and newspapers,
Mhm.
and promotional things,
Yeah.
signs, stuff like that. So the other stuff, there's far fewer pieces, but they just take up a lot more space. And I think that's why the shipping manifest stuff just kind of sat for a while because it was compact. And it could just kind of be set in the room and no one really thought about it too much. But speaking, sort of selfishly as someone who doesn't necessarily live in Skagway and focus all of my attention on Skagway, those coasting manifests, right? They list every port that this ship stopped at. And every time they stop and deliver something, they list the consignee. So you get the name of the person and what they ordered. And so for towns I've never heard of, that are listed in Orth's Dictionary of Alaska Place Names as like, it was there in 1898 and it's got a post office in 1899 and then by 1902 it's gone. Right. Every place now, of at least one resident who was there ordering their bacon, all the way up. And, or like the little businesses that existed in Metlakatla, or whatever. I learned more about Mary's Island.
Mary
Then,
Island is accurate.
I never even heard of it. It was like the customs port of entry for that critical period of time. And so it's really fascinating to discover all that stuff. Like you said, Chris, you never know the next bundle you open up, what you're gonna find in there. It's like a really cool aspect of the project.
It's a surprise factor.
Yeah.
Well, and when you put those, because I do a fair amount of historical workups for people, putting those together with what we published in every single port town sailings. The Amsterdam arriving from the Sirocco departing for and beyond. Start putting those together and you begin to have a little picture. What's going on. But the other thing, of course, John did the 1900 census, and you have this big blank spot that's called Skagway and Nome, which is Mrs. Green, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Brown, Mr. Jones, Mr. Green, Mr. Brown. Coming from Holcomb, San Francisco, Holcomb, Seattle. Basically worthless census data. You've got some surnames, which just so the guy was just getting his $3 a head by copying the manifest, just the surnames and, so something like this is just invalid. But you have now real people's names of the people who are coming in and going.
Yeah, and for all of those shipwrecks, there's a maritime archaeologist who was investigating, it's called the Islander,
Yes.
that went down coming out of Skagway and lost, I don't remember how many millions in gold bullion. And it turns out those insurance claims are still active because they haven't found the wreck yet. And so she's been looking for a manifest for that final voyage that would actually list what was on the ship when it went down. And I know we found an Islander, but we haven't found it from its final voyage.
No, we haven't found the final one, but we've definitely have processed some of the Islander cargo manifests.
The other thing too, and this is something I do periodically, and I'm just passing it forward, there's a project called From the Page.
Is that the citizen and archivist kind of thing?
Yeah, collaborative, sort of, the family search model. And currently the big project is transcribing the letters of the gold miners of the California Gold Rush. The letters home. And typically some of them are written across and then written up and down and written on both sides of the page. So, you spend a couple of hours transcribing half of the page. But I'm wondering if collaborative indexing of some of these handwritten records is something to consider.
Yeah, well, this is the very first step for this project. Again, and this is a conversation Lisa used to brought up a lot of times, that in the future, maybe we could have another project where we could just have people volunteering, transcribing documents that have been already digitized and just help us continue entering metadata, or maybe just transcribing them.
And that's a big issue, because there are people from you've got the digitized records, and once it's there, it's stable. It's not going to go away. And say, take a page at a time. Who are the people? What are the numbers? What are the other critical data? You set up an index model, especially if you're looking at manifest kinds of things. You set up a skeleton and you fill in the blanks. And that, I think there are more people out there for whom that is something they could do with their experience. It's a possibility.
For sure, like this project has a lot of potential for the future. And again, this is just the first approach we had with it. So very sure there will be more ideas in the future just to continue doing things with it.
When did the park receive all the stuff, or how long you guys have
We
it?
acquired the ship manifest in 2008.
2008? And how about Rapuzzi? Was he alive that long, or when did he pass, or?
I don't remember when he passed, but after he passed away, it was donated to the Rasmussen Foundation.
It was purchased by Rasmus.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think he passed in like 87. And he'd been in, discussions with the park for a long time. And then his widow was in discussions for a long time. And there just was so much. I mean, I don't think either the city or the park, I mean, there's no way any single individual could have acquired all of his things, unless you're a resident. And so the Rasmussen Foundation bought it. I don't have any idea what the deal was there. And gave half to the city. Half. I mean, they were able to select. And I don't remember how many buildings the park acquired through that, but I know there are still some buildings that they acquired through that have not been conserved in any way. Like the Rapuzzi house.
Yeah, they're currently working on the mayor's building and the YMCA.
So exciting now, but I feel like, I remember that in the early 2000s. That they were involved because I know,
Yeah, because they didn't want any of it to leave the state.
right,
Yeah.
and or thrown away.
Right,
Right, like,
exactly.
and that's really is that the buildings get sold to somebody who's going to develop it, and they're gonna just be like, to whoever's doing the renovation, and just throw everything away. And so I know the historical society was really keen on, I don't know if it was the state or the local, or both, who helped, and probably brought, talked to Diane and was like, how can we make this happen?
Yeah.
And keep it, it's, can you speak to the sort of, I'm a conservator, kind of interested in your treatments and stuff. So for the bound, materials, if are you cleaning even the pages with nothing written on them, or how are you dealing with the more time-consuming ones? Because then that leaves you less time for the thin, more fragile materials that actually might do it. Like how are you guys approaching your prioritization?
So far, we've only conserved one bound item, and it was last year. Their condition, its condition was really good. It was stable enough for us just to go through the pages. It just pretty much needed some cleaning. I mean, it is a book. It was not super dirty at all. And a few things, but Brayden did it all. And yes, he cleaned it all. And again, throughout the years, we have modified a few things. First with Allison's approval. And now we are cleaning documents that really need to be cleaned. For example, for this books that we have that pretty much clean overall, or documents that have been in sealed envelopes, first they're not dirt. So we can just skip this process and continue with what their needs are.
So are you just going box by box and just dealing with what you get, or is there what the first pass, like, did you guys prioritize which box? That's what how did you approach the overall arching?
So what I started doing was, I am currently going through the unconserved boxes of documents, and I'm pretty much checking the overall information that they have and sorting their high research value ones. I am starting to enter some metadata in the database, and then I'm temporarily rehousing them for the interns to process first.
That makes sense. Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think, at this point, probably the research value is kind of taking a lead over conservation aids, because a lot of them really are in very good condition. I mean, even though they were taken out of like literally a hole in the ground, they were really well preserved, because I don't think anybody looked at them from the time that they were created and put in the cubby at the office to the time they got pulled out to be cleaned. So,
Very little physical damage.
very little physical damage.
And maybe pretty stable, because they got climatized to the situation they were in. That's so it's a really good model to think about when you're thinking about approaching projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like Chris said, a lot of this, the process can just sort of be tweaked for any kind of project. You can take that processing survey and kind of put onto it whatever elements, you wanna, control for, your research elements and your, conservation, like if you are in a wet climate, and you're looking for more water damage, you can kind of like elevate that on your survey and do the same kind of process to come up with the same prioritization matrix. And that kind of drives the whole project, and then you get the bulk of it done. And then research interest, you get a snowball effect, and then people are like, oh, well, what's in the rest of these boxes? And then there's, a lot more resources put towards finishing up. So,
And what
it's a good
database,
approach.
and what database?
We're just using an Excel spreadsheet right now. Yeah. And with, like 20,000 documents, to get a citizen science kind of archival transcription process going, I mean, that's a lot of scans to put online. So that's where, it's kind of like a phase 2 to figure out how to capture all that metadata and how to tag it and tie it up with the scans.
What
Yeah.
database? I'm hoping that you have found one that you like.
It's called Excel.
I know.
It always is.
I
It's
know.
called Excel.
It can go into anything.
It can. That's the beauty. Yeah.
How much of the stuff has that really faded ink? And do you think it was the type of ink or?
I would say
What
it's definitely
happened
the
to it?
type of ink, because we found some other purple inks, black inks, and they haven't presented the same issue. So it's definitely, I would say the ink, not even the vape. It's really water sensitive. We found some other red inks that are really water sensitive, but they're not faded at all. So it is just the green ink, and there have been many times where we found the green ink on yellow documents, so it just gets more challenging. Mhm. Which is weird because sometimes, and this happened during the training, you're trying to read it looking like directly in front of it, but it happened to be easier to tell what it says if you look at it from an angle. So it is. And trying to digitize them is even more challenging. And for that, I mean, we're prioritizing the contents of the documents over the aesthetics of them. So we have definitely had to adjust the camera settings specifically for these type of documents and just make them look a little darker than what they look in real life to be able to read what they say. Sarah started transcribing some of them during the training just because we assume this is something that if we don't take action now, they will just continue to fade. And we don't want to reach that point. So we want to capture as much metadata as we can now before we lose them completely.
Yeah,
Sorry, she had, yeah.
I was just gonna mention that Allison, the paper conservator, talking about how this period of time was a pretty interesting period of time because there are so many different paper manufacturers coming along and everybody's creating these new inks, and a lot of the papers are very heavily sized, maybe to make them a little bit waterproof for use on ships. And so they're super glossy, some of them, but you're still getting some iron gall ink from, miners using old recipes. And so there's just so many different, as she would call them, types of media at play, that we actually kind of went a little bit national treasure on the green ink and like tried to dab it with vinegar to see if that would bring it back a little bit. Or, she's like, no, I'm gonna think about this. But there was nothing that we tried that made it any darker. And because these clearly haven't been exposed to the light, her assessment was that they're just fading. They're gonna disappear.
Ultraviolet.
No, try UV.
What about
Mhm.
infrared?
What did she say the next step would be? I don't remember if it was infrared or she said she'd need some sort of special equipment to try to.
I think she
It's
said,
infrared.
infrared.
We need a light with the filter on the camera. Like, or that.
Yeah, well, the same thing is true of census data, the original generations in Europe. When you run the gamut from handwriting that was made in December 1909, so many mining camps. And it's absolutely legible. It's just black on white. You look at others in the same census in another place, and it's just just.
There's lots of
So
ink
you-
manufacturers.
I know. Variation is time ago, maybe.
And, oh,
Trying to capture the date.
I think we also had a question.
okay,
Sorry.
Let's keep on this, mine is a little different.
Oh, okay, good.
okay, so the watermarks that you showed, was that on the paper manufacturers?
Yes,
You think, okay.
yeah, that comes from factory.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, just plenty of them, and this is a really good addition we can do, because there are a lot of databases for watermarks, and so far the one we're currently using and consulting is pretty simple, and it's just text. So I'm pretty sure there's more to be discovered, but the amount of watermarks that we have found so far is just a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I'm pretty sure it could be useful just as a reference for like a catalog or something that people can use in the future as well.
I just think that whole thing we took for granted for formal documents, and then, maybe a little bit longer.
Well, we still buy paper with watermarks on it for.
Yeah, how often? It's now it's a rarity then, as a matter of, if you were a business person and you had, a real substance, you have a lot of paper. Think about that, it's just larger, come and gone, it's a very big thing.
Yeah, it's a whole, I think just what these ship manifests say about transportation routes and all that's really interesting too, right? Because then even after the Klondike Gold Rush is ending, people are coming to Skagway and going over to get down the Yukon to hit like other gold rushes that are happening. And, so it really ties, in the Park Service, sort of, sometimes people can speak in their own codes like KLGO for the Klondike Gold Rush, is its former acronym, but that really ties Klondike to Yukon Charlie, which is the next park up, and it links those two parks historically in a very interesting way, when normally nobody thinks about Yukon Charlie and Klondike in the same breath, because they were established as totally different parks for totally different reasons and totally different parts of the state, and very far apart geographically. But now we see this linkage between that movement of people. It's just really cool.
And if you consider that for a period of probably almost 20 years, a good portion of people living in interior Alaska, all the way to the Iditarod, basically cleared out before the ice went out. Before the ice closed everything in. And where did they end up going through? Skagway. And the fact that only one ship ever crashed and lost a whole bunch of people. So, yeah. But that's, the cream of the crop, and successful business people, teachers, preachers, you name it, are all coming through that route and going south and spending their winters in Colorado, San Francisco.
Yeah, and
Still a lively place.
at the training this time, they were conserving a document. I mean, I could talk about this for 4 hours, so this is the last thing I want to say. Was that, who did we see on the passenger manifest coming to Metlakatla but William Duncan?
Oh my God.
Right? So so there are like prominent people whose movements, we can track there, and it's just,
You don't know. It's William Duncan is the reason why all the Shinshin people were came to Canada. He brought them in 1890. She met with that. So really cool. Yeah. Do we not have a reservation?
We just found the Olympic Hotel listed in one of the manifests this week. So this was a hotel that was in Dai.
Oh.
We haven't seen it before, so again, continue to find new things. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Well, thank you.
You had a
Well,
question.
question.
Yeah.
Actually, is kind of, I can just ask you after. Sorry, I didn't ask you. No, okay. Well, is that- For the project management side, it's a multi-year project. How much time did it take and what was it like planning for it before you started, especially because there was a lot you couldn't plan for it until you did start and saw what you were doing with the boxes.
Well, I wasn't there for the very beginning of it. Well, yes and no. But I remember at the beginning, it was just planned to last for 3 years, right? And I mean, after knowing what we were actually dealing with, we realized, well, if the expectation of the part is for us to process all of them, 3 years are not gonna be enough time. So we were lucky enough to continue to get some more funding for the project for at least 2 more years. And again, we changed the approach we had at the beginning, and now I am sorting the high research value documents to be prioritized and processed. And hopefully, I mean, even if we don't finish processing them all, at least the high priority with high research values will be available and accessible for researchers.
Yeah, the whole project was very backwards. I mean, you know, from what my experience has been, normally you get something and then you look at it and you appraise it and you catalog it and you say, oh, this is really important and valuable, and then we should go get some conservation money for it, because that's just how the process works. But there were so many of these documents, and many of them were so hard to even open. I think there was just sort of a leap of faith made that Rapuzzi collected this stuff. You open up a couple and they say 18 something on them, and you know, that's every park is created for some reason that is unique to that park. And the whole reason that Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park exists is because of the Gold Rush. And so this material spoke directly to its congressional mandate to document that event. So I think the putting the cart before the horse of let's conserve them and then figure out what they are, you know, is not necessarily a project management technique that I would recommend for most places, right? Because you don't want to spend a lot of money on what turns out to be junk. And as we found, there's a lot of tickets in there, there's a lot of receipts in there. You know, the money is going to run out eventually, and we're not going to touch 15,000 pieces, and we're not going to touch any more receipts or tickets. You know, I mean, if it's tickets in a sealed envelope, there's really no reason to do anything with those except maybe report that they exist. So it's just kind of like being flexible and constantly iterating the project management goals to continue to make it relevant, you know, because I think if we kept going the way we started the project, which, you know, they couldn't even hire a project manager at the beginning for many reasons. So we were all just kind of like trying to shoestring it along. And if we had continued to persist in these are the goals that we have laid out, we're going to conserve everything, and we're going to, I think support would have dried up. But this way, you know, you guys are finding something new and exciting all the time, and the interpretation staff are getting involved in it. And, you know, everybody's excited about it. And so you just have to, I think, constantly refine what you're doing to keep it relevant, and to look at the money and see where you're going. You're like, I don't think we're going to make it there, so let's do this instead. So I think it's really more about, yeah, just being flexible and having the perfect plan up, because you're never going to have the perfect plan. Right.
Do the tickets have people's names on them?
They do.
Mhm. So someday, yeah,
They're so
someone gets
awesome.
like that.
And the park gets requests. I mean, like every summer, 20,000 people on cruise ships.
Yeah.
My great grandfather,
Yes.
you know, and I know the city museum has printouts of like passenger names, right?
The
But a
park
lot of
also
that
has
data
a
comes
list.
out of the Yukon, because Skagway never had any of that as a database. So a lot of those people are people that got to Canadian Customs and registered. So all of that data is coming out of Yukon. There's nothing local with lists of names. And so, you know, now the park is going to have this, this resource where, you know, cruise ship folk are going to be able to come in and hopefully type in a name into the Excel spreadsheet. And, say, whoa,
Control F.
yes, that's right. It's all about control.
Yeah.
A good part of what I do as the person who's on the other end of TYHS, Yeah. Henry, oh, here's what I, oh, do you have any? So what do you have? The newspaper, you have census data, you have marriage, birth, death, if they happen to get married, have a kid, die. But again, these large gaps, and what you're missing is this originally in my root data. And this is a project.
And anybody that orders books delivered to somebody in Skagway, or, you know, they're gonna go there and pick up their bacon. Because I think a lot of those people didn't necessarily live in Skagway, but that's where they came to get their mail, right? So, yeah, all those names show up there, it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing all that hard work. I mean.
Oh, I mean,
It's
it
fun.
could have been done with all the teamwork.
Yeah, exactly.
It's paid too.
I know, right? Oh, okay, great.